Have you ever been to a place that just felt wrong somehow? Maybe you saw shadows in your peripheral vision. Maybe it was just a feeling, but you'd swear there was something evil there. We're going to find out why. This video is haunted. Before you turn it off, hear me out. There's not a ghost or demon hiding on the YouTube servers ready to leap through the internet and into your life. At least I assume there isn't, and if there is, I didn't put it there. I don't mean this video is literally haunted by a ghost. Rather, I've artificially haunted this video as part of a sort of psychological experiment, and you're all participating just by watching. So, what are we talking about? It has to do with the audio. There's a growing body of literature that suggests at least some paranormal occurrences might not be the work of ghosts, but of sound frequencies so low you can't consciously hear them. But you can still feel them, and they can cause all kinds of strange feelings, sometimes even hallucinations. Sound is a wave. Higher pitched sounds have high frequencies. That is, the wave repeats more times per second. This corresponds with a lower or shorter wavelength. So high pitched sounds have lots of really skinny waves. Low pitched sounds have a long wavelength and a low frequency. So lower sounds are fewer repetitions of really fat waves. Sound waves travel through a medium, usually the air, and into our ears. The ear has a sort of conical shape to focus the wave inward toward the eardrum. The sound wave vibrates the eardrum, and those signals are converted into neural messages the brain can understand and interpret as sound. Of course, that's an oversimplification, but it's good enough for our purposes here. We don't hear all frequencies of sound, however. Ultrasound isn't just a way of looking at unborn children. It consists of sounds with frequencies higher than we can consciously perceive. In general, humans can hear sounds up to a frequency of about 20,000 hertz, or cycles per second, though we start to lose the high end as we age. In fact, I've read that some stores try to discourage teenagers from loitering by playing very high sounds that young people can hear, but older people can't. Infrasound, on the other hand, consists of frequencies below conscious perception. We can hear sounds down to just about 20 hertz. Anything below that is out of our ability to perceive consciously as sound. However, that doesn't mean we can't still be affected by it. There's a particular frequency of infrasound, usually thought to be around 18.9 hertz, which is just below the threshold of our ability to hear. But even though we can't hear it, we can sometimes feel vibrations from it if it's loud enough. That is, if the waves are strong enough. But it's not just the vibration we might feel. That very frequency of sound is close to the resonant frequency of the human eye. That means the fluid in the eye might vibrate slightly when exposed to such sound waves, and that can cause hallucinations. For some people, though not everyone, the same frequency also seems to affect structures in the brain in such a way as to create feelings of dread or an unseen presence in the room. Remember when I said this video was a haunted experiment? This is why. Though you can't hear it, I've included an audio track in this video that produces a pure tone of 18.9 hertz, almost as loud as my voice. It certainly won't affect everyone. Different people are differently susceptible to such things. But if you suddenly see some shadow moving just in your peripheral vision, or if you suddenly have a feeling that you're not alone and something evil is in the room with you, it's likely not because there's necessarily anything really there. More likely, it's the infrasound in this video. Infrasound is controversial among those who study the paranormal scientifically. It's been reasonably well documented to cause these effects but not in all people and not all the time, which has led some researchers to question the hypothesis. But I'm here to tell you it's a real phenomenon. Some of you know that I work with the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society. Our goal is to scientifically investigate claims of the paranormal, and we've been able to find some cases in which infrasound turned out to be the culprit. A good example was our investigation several years ago at the supposedly haunted Denver County Jail. I won't go into the whole story here. That's either for another video, one of our public lectures, or the books of our case files that we're currently working on. But I will share the story of one particular cell in the jail. Inmates and guards alike had reported that this cell in particular was extremely haunted. When our team investigated, the jail had been evacuated of inmates, so our people were able to look around without being interrupted. When one of my colleagues stepped into that cell for a moment, he almost immediately had a terrible feeling that something was wrong. When he stepped out, everything seemed fine. We investigated further by using a sound pressure meter inside the cell, and we determined that, though we couldn't hear it, the cell was home to a very loud noise of right about 18.9 hertz, exactly the frequency we've been talking about. It turned out to be a fan system that connected to the showers on the other side of the cell, vibrating at that frequency. When the fans were off, the cell wasn't haunted. When they were on, and it was filled with that 18.9 hertz frequency, it felt like the devil himself might be hanging out in that cell. The effect was first described by an engineer named Vic Tandy in 1998. After experiencing some unusual feelings in the laboratory, he eventually discovered the culprit was, as in our case, a fan in the lab emitting sound frequencies of around 19 hertz. He even reported the frequency could cause difficulty breathing because it's close to the resonant frequency of many internal organs, including the lungs. Though replications of the experiments have seen mixed success, Tandy and other scientists have gone on to document infrasound between 18 and 19 hertz at a variety of supposedly haunted locations around the world. Rocky Mountain Paranormal's own findings thus join a growing literature on the subject. And yes, horror movies have also capitalized on the phenomenon. A movie called The Dead Room, which I recommend, is marketed as featuring, quote, new rumble soundscape technology, which is described as a, quote, new pre-show technology that uses infrasound waves to immerse the audience in a low-frequency soundscape to help attune the viewer for the atmospheric frights of this motion picture. If you want to check it out for yourself, there will be a link down in the What's It. Honestly, I'm surprised more horror movies aren't using this idea. If your goal is to scare your audience, as I think we can all agree is what we really want to do, this seems like something we'd want to have in our tool belts. It would be especially useful at movie theaters with large sound systems, I think. Imagine a whole audience of people getting weird feelings or hallucinating ghosts in the middle of a horror movie. Brilliant. And that's what I'm trying to do with my experiment here. Have you been experiencing any of these effects while you've been watching? Let me know down in the comments. Regardless, do be sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. But that leads us directly to the punchline. Odds are, if enough people are watching, some of you have probably been experiencing at least some of the phenomenon I've described. But you shouldn't be, because I've been lying to you. Not about infrasound and the paranormal. That's all true. But I did lie about adding 18.9 hertz infrasound to this video. I didn't. Even if I had, the odds that the sound system on your phone, computer, or headphones could produce such a low frequency aren't very good. In fact, producing bass at such low frequencies requires a pretty expensive subwoofer, and I doubt you've got one of those hooked up to whatever you're watching this video on. If you do happen to be listening to my nonsense on that good of a sound system, you have my thanks and my apologies. So you're not actually hearing anything that could make this video haunted. Why, then, am I guessing that some of you have experienced those phenomena anyway? That has to do with another factor that can generate paranormal experience, And this time, it's a purely psychological phenomenon. It has to do with expectation. When I told you this video was haunted, and then told you what sort of phenomena you ought to experience as a result of the infrasound haunting, I was psychologically priming you to expect exactly that sort of reaction. For some people, just that suggestion is sufficient to cause the effect. It's called a nocebo effect. It's like a placebo effect, but with a negative impact instead of a positive one. The expectation or suggestion itself produces the psychophysiological response. Beyond that, once the seed has been planted, even if you don't immediately experience anything because of the suggestion, you're likely to interpret any small anomaly through the lens of that expectation. Any weird feeling or slight blurring in your vision might then be attributed to the infrasound, regardless of its actual cause, and once you start to experience things, it's really easy for the effect to run away and end up in a sort of self-reinforcing cycle. So what's the point? What lessons are we supposed to learn from this? The big lesson is that we can't trust our own senses or our own minds. It's very easy for them to play all kinds of tricks on us, and if we don't know what we're looking for, we might assume they're caused by ghosts or demons or aliens, even if it turns out to just be some faulty machinery. My hope is that this gives you a bit of food for thought, as well as a peek behind the curtain at scientific paranormal investigation, which honestly doesn't bear much resemblance to what we all like to watch on our favorite paranormal reality TV shows. That's not to say I'm saying that all hauntings are necessarily caused by these phenomena. I'm just raising it as a possibility that explains some hauntings. And yeah, I'm also kind of hoping that horror filmmakers start throwing an infrasound track into their movies just to see what happens when they play them at big theaters with industrial sound systems. I'm curious, and I'd sure as hell be first in line to watch such a movie. Anyway, though that was a brief one, I hope you found it interesting. Stay tuned for my next video in which we'll talk about something else to do with horror. Until then, take care and stay scared.